Hey, this is Max. I am here with the GR Supra. Since I had the chance to actually get behind the wheel of this car as well as get some up close look at it, I figured I would make a video and kind of give you my take on this car. This is obviously an extremely anticipated car by many enthusiasts, especially those of us who had history with Japanese vehicles. We all have heard of the Supra. Anybody who plays CSR2 probably have heard of the Supra, and anybody who watches the Fast and Furious probably heard of the Supra. Well, what's interesting about the GR, first of all, this is not a very big car. Let's take a look here. You see that? That's an Audi A6 right there. That's the Supra next to it. Yes, they're not side by side, so the perspective is a little off, but you can tell the Supra is a relatively small car. In fact, I would venture to say it's not that much bigger than the FRS, which is itself a pretty tiny car. When I was getting in and out of the Supra, I didn't feel that it was extremely small on the inside. In fact, ergonomically, it was quite fine once you get in. The door sill was a little wide, but nothing too difficult to manage. The other thing that surprised me a little bit is that the car's not nearly as wide as I had thought it would be to give it the aggressive stance that I was expecting from the Supra. Um, the track width and specs make it out to be a pretty decently wide car, but in person it feels a little bit less wide and low and more of a slightly taller but rounded look. That probably has a lot to do with the wheel offset and also the wider proportion of the front, which takes away a little bit of the width feel in the back. I'm sure the aftermarket is going to fix that. Now, here I'm approaching the vents, and this is a bit of a disappointment for me because every single one of these vents that look like a vent is in fact fake. They're all just pieces of plastic. Uh, you know that for a car of this caliber and this price range, I would expect that they actually design legitimate functional vents into it, especially since they're trying to keep the look of the concept car. But here, all these vents are basically just pieces of plastic inserts. That really should be something the aftermarket again can easily fix, but it's disappointing to see the stock car doesn't have a single functioning small vent. Now, the larger mouth opening in the front, obviously, those do serve a purpose. And that built-in splitter you see in the bumper there, that does have a little bit of a space there with a guide for air. So arguably, those at least are functional. Now, the hood vent, particularly, I would think a functional vent would actually help release some heat from the engine bay. But again, I'm no designer. That's just kind of my perspective on it. Again, the width of the car, I think the aftermarket could easily come to the rescue here and make this car wider looking. A little bit of a flared rear of 2 inches or three, nah, three might be too wide. I would say 2 inches in the rear width increase would give this car a much more aggressive stance. The other thing is, Toyota surprised me by putting 19-inch wheels on it. Not that I'm saying I like 20-inch wheels. The 19s are probably better performance oriented and lighter, but at least in the rear with the slightly lower offset and the smaller wheel, it doesn't make the car look as aggressive as it would be if it had, say, wider 20-inch. Here is the hood switch. Let's pop the hood and take a look. In the meantime, here's a quick look at the interior. Honestly, there's not a whole lot here that really catches my eye. It looks typical of BMW's interior with the switch gear, although it does show you that this is a launch edition Supra with launch edition number 1341 out of 1500. This one's a red and black combo. You don't get a black car would come with a red combo, and I think a white car would come with a red combo. Here I have the hood up. Now this thing looks massive when it's up. That's because it's essentially the whole front of the car. They built the hood to basically cover the fender well as well. What's also interesting is that the actual fender, the metal fender, doesn't connect to the front bumper anywhere, and you have this floppy piece of plastic that essentially covers your wheel right there. See? So you don't even have real fender pieces, and the hood kind of finishes the top when you close it. Again, if you look at that hood where it covers the engine, there's a lot of plastic. It's typical of modern motors. You don't really see much other than the big plastic cover. This is, in fact, a BMW motor, as we are all pretty well aware, and Toyota is not trying to hide the fact. In fact, one of the pieces right here on the side, out in the open, has a nice little BMW symbol on it. So it tells you exactly what it is. Now, some people online have really uh, said that they dislike the fact that it's a BMW motor, that they're disappointed. It's not really a Supra motor. I'll tell you this, my experience with BMW motors are that they tune quite well, and many of them make plenty of power. If you look at the 335s and the Turbo M3s, they're just a flash away from another 50 to 150 horsepower depending on who you go with. So I suspect this supermotor, even though it's built by BMW, will soon be making much more horsepower than whatever the factory says it does. Even as it is now, I think it's pretty underrated. Toyota puts it out as something like 346 or 345 horsepower, and the BMW version says it's 380. The magazine's dynoing already said that the car puts as much to the wheels as it does theoretically at the crank. So we all know it's underrated. Plus, with its turbochargers and BMW engine management, I'm pretty sure the tuners will pretty quickly extract another 100 or so horsepower out of it just by flash tunes. And that'll be cool because it'll make the car a lot faster. Now, I didn't take any videos while driving the car for obvious reasons, but I can tell you this car definitely feels fast enough to get you in trouble. One interesting thing is that it accelerates very well. The engine has no perceptible turbo lag at all. When I stepped on the throttle, the car went. There's no linear acceleration change, meaning when I stepped on the gas, you felt a pull just like a typical strong NA motor, like a V8 in the Corvette, has a somewhat linear pull. This did as well. There's no instant acceleration. Almost, best way to describe it would be you don't have the VTEC feel kicking in at a higher RPM. All of a sudden, the car pulls much, much harder. It just pulls all the way through the rev range at the limited speed that I was able to hit. The other thing that surprised me about this car is that its ride is very compliant. I was driving around in some pretty rough streets with potholes and construction damage. The car took it very well. I did not feel like I was getting shaken up and really rattled around in the car. So is this car worth the money? My friend here definitely paid above MSRP, and personally, I think for a $60,000 car, it is pretty good, but I don't think it's necessarily worth more to pay all the extra premium, even though you are getting a launch edition, which has that nice little plaque. I think the regular Supra will do me just fine if I were to go that route. Although, personally, as cool as this car is, I'm just not particularly keen on getting one. Here, I also want to give you a close-up of the brakes. Notice that the brake rotor is not all that huge, so the 19s actually leave a decent amount of space. So that again is something the aftermarket may go and upgrade with something a little more aggressive and larger. Although when I hit the brakes, the car stopped very easily. So being that it's a small car, probably not super heavy, that size brakes were already very effective for your needs. It's a two-seater. The trunk is a little sad. I didn't take a video of the trunk, but I'll be throwing in a picture at the end of this video. I also will throw in a little sound clip of the exhaust. However, due to the wind, the sound clip isn't the best in the world. So let's take a look at the trunk real quick, picture format, and then let's give you the sound clip real quick as well. So here you see the trunk in picture form. It's a small trunk, but that is a sports car and not a grocery getter, so it's not something I'm totally. So that was the exhaust clip. I'm sorry it wasn't the best in quality because it was windy outside and I'm on a cell phone. But the bottom line is this is a pretty decent car and I was quite impressed with it. Uh, Despite its faults, I think it's a good car and certainly for the price, you're getting plenty of car for your money. Does it make me want to get one? Not really. I'm not quite that into it. But at the same time, I'm looking forward to seeing it coming potentially to CSR2 and maybe get to play around with it in the game. Hey, that is my layman's review of the GR Supra. I'm no expert on cars, but I do love cars, and I figured I would share my experience today with you. Let me know what you think. You like it? You don't like it? But in the end, what matters is the guy who owns it loves it. I hope you liked the video. Please feel free to comment, and thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.